If you've been told you need millions of dollars to retire, you've been lied to. And that lie could be the reason you're still working when you don't have to. But there's a way to retire well, even with less than $1 million. And today I'll show you how. I'm going to give you an example similar to some folks I recently spoke with. We'll call our hypothetical couple today Mark and Lisa. They're both 62 and they have about $850,000 saved. This is very similar to people I talk with regularly who are convinced that they don't have enough to retire and they feel trapped in their jobs. I'll show you how once we walk through the numbers, their retirement reality looked very different. The problem wasn't how much they had. It was how much they thought that they needed. The first mistake that robs people of their best retirement is this. It's that you've been lied to and then you believe the lie. You've been lied to by the financial media, lied to by Wall Street. Here's what I mean. Everywhere you look, all over the internet, all over YouTube, there's probably a video like right over here, right now, or right over there. I don't remember which side it's on. There's a video next to me that's probably telling you need $2 or $3 million to have a secure retirement. I saw one last week that said something like $2 million is pennies now in retirement. What a ludicrous thing to say, but guess what? It gets people to click. Why? Because fear sells. The problem with that is that if you're just pounded on often enough with the same message, your inside voice starts to change. You start to think they might actually be right. But here's the truth. Retirement is not about hitting a magic number. It's about creating the right income plan. Income is what fuels retirement, not millions of dollars. Here's the key takeaway to destroy that limiting belief. Always remember, it's not about a certain size pile of money. Retirement is about cash flow and flexibility. If you can generate consistent income and you can keep cost in check, you can retire well even without having millions of dollars. Now that first mistake compounds into each of the others we're about to talk about because it all plays on the same fear. Keep that in mind as we go through the video. It might challenge some of your thinking. It's that fear that keeps people from making the leap into retirement, the fear of not having enough. Here's that second retirement killer. I told you that the key to retirement is cash flow. This is what I mean. You've lived your entire adult life with some sort of cash flow, some kind of paycheck, and you likely lived within your means, you spent less than you made, and you went on about your business. And all of a sudden, at 55 or 60 or 65, when it's time to retire, you're supposed to just flip-flop into some version of like Social Security and then just take some money from that pile of cash over there that you got. You know, just take some of it from the old 401k, but not too much. Don't take too much because you'll run out and you'll be a retirement failure. That's foolish thinking. And it runs counter to the way that you've lived as a functioning member of society for the last 30 or 40 years. You don't need a bigger pile of money. You need a retirement paycheck. You need to know how much you have to live on. That's the biggest thing that I see people being held back by all of the time. The retirement killer is this. Most people, when trying to figure out their retirement paycheck, they go hunting for a story that tells them it's going to be okay. They find a math problem that masquerades as a plan. That's the 4% rule. It's the sacred cow of retirement planning. It's been cited more times than I can possibly count on internet articles about how much you can use or how much you can spend in retirement. Here's why it fails retirees. If you follow the 4% rule, you draw 4% per year from your pile of money, increase it for cost of living each year, and you won't run out of money. And the problem is, they're right. 96% of the time, you won't run out of money. That's not the issue. The problem isn't the math. The math works. The problem is it's a junk plan because around 40% of the time you end up 30 years later with more money than you started with when you retired. In the wildest example, I'll pop it up on the screen right here. Check this out. You retire with $1 million. You draw 4% each year adjusted for inflation, and you die with $5.7 million. What kind of plan is that? How massively would someone have underlived their retirement if they had actually followed the 4% rule there? The 4% rule is a fine math equation. The math works, but it's completely wrong for a retirement income plan. And so if that's wrong, what's right? Well, two things. Step number one, build a retirement paycheck. Use a 3-bucket plan to segment your assets, and then use some of those assets to create regular, continuous income to create your own retirement paycheck. Remember, it's income, not assets. that drive retirement. Let's walk through the example that I talked about. Let's talk about Mark and Lisa again. Remember, they're both 62. They're both still working. They both want to retire like right now. If they elected Social Security right now, Mark would get $2,205 per month. Lisa would get $1,875 a month. Currently, they spend around $6,000 a month in after-tax dollars. They have no debt. They have property taxes, insurance, general living expenses. They don't live an extravagant lifestyle, but they're happy and they don't spend too much money. And they were under the impression that they'd need more than $1 million. They felt like they'd be okay somewhere around $1.2 million, $1.3 million, which they thought they might be able to get to by around age 67, which was their full retirement age. And so that was their plan when they met me. We'll just keep working. We'll retire somewhere around 67. Now, I'll get to the exact structure in a minute as I break all this down for you. But for right now, total Social Security of $4,080 per month pre-tax. They basically get a $2,000 a month gap between the $4,000 they have and the $6,000 they'll need. They'll need a little bit more to cover healthcare costs until they get to Medicare, and they want to do a little bit of travel. But it's like go camping for a week, head to Nashville for a long weekend travel. It is not take a hot air balloon ride around the world kind of travel. Again, just normal folks trying to figure out this massive shift of going from working into retirement. And so we got a $2,000 a month gap in basic living expenses. File that away for a minute, and then we'll put this all together. But before we do that, let's get on to the final retirement killer. It's taxes. Creating a tax plan that will work throughout your retirement. Actually, that's not the killer. If you have a tax plan, you're ahead of like 97% of the retirement population. It's the not having a tax plan that busts your retirement, especially if you're retiring with a portfolio that's under $1 million. That might seem backward because with a smaller portfolio, you may feel like taxes will be more manageable. But I'll tell you that if you're retiring with less than $1 million, every dollar counts. And managing the tax bill is one of the best ways to make that money last in retirement. Now, lots of financial YouTubers, myself included, talk about Roth IRAs until we're blue in the face. Let me give you a take you probably hadn't thought of. If you have to-be taxed money, traditional 401k, IRA type of money, and you're watching your retirement planning video on YouTube, so I bet that you do. You don't have nearly as much as you think you do in your account, and you never will. And that's because every dollar in that account, every dollar you ever earn in that account is subject to your silent partner, Uncle Sam, coming in to wet his beak every time you take a distribution from the account. With a 30 or more year retirement time frame, the sooner you can buy your partner out and start keeping all of the gains for yourself, the better. Now, here's a quick example of that in action. This is third bucket money, growth money for the future in the plans that we build for clients. This is your stock market money. For Mark and Lisa, that ended up being around $400,000. Like I said, break that down in a second. But we created a plan to convert $400,000 into Roth money. Because of our bucket plan, we didn't need this money for income. So we were able to convert it, to create a plan to drip it out slowly. If we didn't, and we left it in the traditional accounts, and it averaged an 8% return over the next 10 years, it grows to around $887,000. Even just taking RMDs from that money by that point results in a lot of taxes over the next 20 plus years, as you can see right here on the screen. Instead of that, we started converting the money to Roth starting at age 63, which resulted in saving a ton, tens of thousands of dollars in projected taxes over their retirement, making their silent partner, Uncle Sam, their ex-partner, Uncle Sam. Now, retirement conversions aren't the only part of a good tax plan, but that's a big needle mover, and so I wanted to highlight it today. Remember, taxes will touch every part of your retirement, and it's important to understand how each decision impacts all of the other ones. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, by the way. I'm working on a deep dive tax plan. I'll get it up in the next few weeks. If you subscribe, you'll be notified when it comes out. Now, let's get back to putting it all together. I've talked about it a little bit before. Mark and Lisa, age 62, thought they had to work to age 67 because they didn't have enough money. I'm going to do this quickly so that we aren't here all day. I got plenty of deep dive case studies on the channel if you want to see more things like this in process. But here we go. They have $850,000 in total assets, $30K in a money market account, $150,000 in a brokerage account, around $670,000 in their 401ks to start with. We know that they've got an income gap of $2,000 a month. Remember, after Social Security, they needed $2,000 a month for general day-to-day living expenses for them, especially with a long retirement period. Using some of their cash for a lifetime income annuity worked out well. So we moved $200,000 into a joint lifetime annuity, and they created a pension for themselves that would provide $1,200 a month in income for as long as either of them was still around. That immediately closed the income gap to $800 a month, which is very reasonable. That also gave them a much larger retirement paycheck that they could count on, and it dropped their portfolio reliance rate quite a bit, the amount of money that they needed from the assets that can fluctuate. That's what I mean when I say portfolio reliance rate. And so now we got $650,000 still to work with, and we only need $800 a month for the base income. Time to build our buckets. Bucket number 1, short-term CDs, money market accounts, cash. We want emergency fund money and 2 to 5 years of income need here. So 5 years of income at $800 a month. It's around $48,000. They were a conservative couple, so we went for the full 5 years plus some additional cash for emergencies. So we're going to leave $75,000 here in bucket number 1 type of money. Bucket number 2, we want to backfill between bucket 1 and up to 10 years worth of income here, as well as additional conservative investments depending upon their comfort level. And so again, they were conservative. They have plenty of wiggle room since we got that income gap so low. And so after some conversations, we landed on $175,000 of bucket 2 money, mostly bonds here, although we use some dividend paying stocks as well. Since we went real heavy in the first bucket, we wanted to give this one a little bit more oomph. Now, we'll take the gains from this money, the interest earned, to refill bucket 1. Because of that low portfolio reliance rate and because of where interest rates are, we can do this almost in perpetuity, almost forever, where we aren't really tapping the principal at all. But even if we needed to, we got a ton of leeway here between the first 2 buckets. That leaves us all the flexibility in the world for bucket 3. This is why we were able to take the long view here and create that beautiful Roth conversion plan. So $400,000 goes here, eventually converting basically all of it to Roth. We've got well more than 10 years of income covered, so we're unlikely to need to touch this money anytime soon. And that buffer, that protection, layering out these assets allows us to invest this money for growth to help us counter inflation, and in this case, to build up additional assets for things like potential healthcare expenses later on in retirement. Now, each plan is unique and different depending upon the person, upon their goals. We're all unique, and our retirement plans should be as well. But I hope I just proved to you why it's a bunch of bunk to think that you need millions of dollars to retire. If you found the video valuable, check out the links below. I've left links to some of our best stuff down there. And when you're ready, check out another deep dive plan that I did that'll answer the question I get a lot, which is how much can you spend if you retire with $1 million? I'll put it right over here.